Dr. Carole is coming on.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Barry, we'll get back to you in a little bit here, but let me get Dr. Carole on here if possible.
Oh, I love her. Hi, Dr. Carole. How are you?
Hello.
You have fans in New York. Even AOC probably, and Bill de Blasio love you. You're hard not to love.
So.
Anyway, good luck. Good luck. Looking forward to your interview. Bye.
Hello, Doctor. How are you? Welcome to Liquid Lunch here on a Monday. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Well, you know, it's interesting, and I'm glad to have you on here because it's one of those things where I think that we're living in a time where wokeism has now permanently infiltrated every part of our existence, even entertainment.
Yes, it is. This world is going crazy. As a psychiatrist, that's my professional diagnosis. This world is going crazy. You know, we just saw, for example, the Oscars. You know, that's an example of, you know, people giving speeches instead of actually trying to entertain us and, you know, appreciating their viewers. In schools, in just everywhere, there is this propaganda, you know, that is telling people that you have to be woke or you're not cool or something bad is going to happen to you.
It's really demoralizing, Dr. Lieberman. And let me just say this, though, too. I mean, and I really want to get your thoughts on this because I talked about it with my previous guest, but it seems like there are lawsuits around the country about transgendered girls playing sports. And I'm a big sports fan, and I talk about it a lot on my show here in New Jersey, Real Talk, where we're analyzing legislators here in the Republican legislators talking about protecting biological girls. And it just seems to me, it's like, you know, liberals and people who identify on the left are all about women's rights. Well, why aren't you all pro-women when it comes to standing up for biological girls when it comes to sports? I just think it's the typical hypocrisy.
People need to understand that we are all born with with chromosomes that determine whether we are boys or girls. XX is a girl, you're born with girl body parts, and XY, you're born with boy body parts. And transgenders are people who are, in this case, you know, the transgender girls who want to be in women's sports or girls' sports, they are born with boy body parts. And they have chosen, now I know that's a controversial statement to make because people want to believe that it's not a choice, but they have chosen to identify as girls. They are not physically girls. And the reason why that's important in sports is because since they are still biologically boys, they come with all the boys' equipment, not just a penis, but with the stronger muscles and all the other physical attributes that would make them better in sports. So of course it's not fair for biological girls to be up against transgender girls.
It's really fundamentally unfair. And I want to sort of pick your brain about this, doctor, because I mean, my PhD is not in psychiatry or psychology. I mean, it's in social sciences, but I remember taking high school biology and I remember passing it. And that was one of the few natural science courses I did well in. But it seems that a Democratic lawmaker from Harvard, of all places, is now claiming that there are 6 sexes on a spectrum, not just 2. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, who are they letting into Harvard these days? And what are they teaching up there? What are they teaching up there in Cambridge?
Yes, I went to Harvard summer school and I took organic chem. They let me in, so I guess they let anybody in. You know, yes, that's very worrisome. What he's referring to, I mean, it's, you know, and he has a degree actually, let's see, he has a degree in English, what was it? He's a former English teacher with a master's in education. He should know better.
Exactly.
What he's talking about is that people are born, some people, a very, very, very small percentage of people, but there are people who are born with sort of combinations of genetic markers. In other words, not just XX or XY, but with additional or less markers. And that has to do with a disorder of the sexual chromosomes in their parents, in the egg or the sperm. And it's a very small percentage, so it really, but what he's trying to say is that, and lots of people try to say this, that there is a spectrum of sexuality. And therefore, you should let people who identify with whatever sex be on the teams of that sex. It's not about discriminating. It's not like anti-transgender to say that, just to state the biology.
I agree with you. And it's really, again, it's really demoralizing to see that there's an insistence, not just by lawmakers, but pop culture, almost every facet of society that's really trying to shove this down our throats. And it's really alarming, to say the very least, though, Doctor.
And this is one of my pet peeves. I mean, there are a lot of things where I talk about the world is going crazy. There are a lot of things that are very upsetting in terms of, how the world is going off the deep end. But one of my pet peeves is how parents these days, it is cool to say that your child who was born a girl or a boy, that they are transgender or they identify, there's something in between. I mean, there are all these names now. And when the parent then, the child could be in elementary school and the parent decides that, oh, okay, my son actually identifies as a girl because he played with dolls. So I will help and encourage him to become a girl. And they do that, and then they get hormones and do all kinds of other things, operations and so on, before the child has even reached puberty. And what happens is the children grow up, and it is a phase. I mean, I treat children and families as well as just adults. And there have been numerous examples of boys who played with dolls, or girls who were tomboys. And, they didn't ultimately identify with that other sex. It was just a phase that they were going through. So if their parents had decided, like, for example, this girl who identified, her father used to bring her toys when he would come home from work every day. And so he sometimes would buy her, like in Target or something, would buy her underwear. And she said she wanted to have Scooby-Doo underwear. She wanted to have underwear that was like typically for boys. And so he bought her that, and other kinds of things. She was a tomboy. Now, if they had decided, this is a sign, she's really a boy, her life would have been destroyed, because now she's 13, she's very much a girl, and she would have been very confused and destroyed. And so parents, it's like it's gotten cool. I mean, parents aren't doing it for the child. They think they are. But it's really a thing about being cool and being I'm very, very woke. Yeah. And this is destroying so many kids' lives.
No, it certainly is, Doctor. And obviously you have the distinction of being America's psychiatrist. So let me just pick your brain here a little bit. We know that well into it, over a year of living in this pandemic, we know that the mental health of millions of Americans have declined. I mean, we've seen Americans really just suffer along mental health lines because of the impact of the pandemic, whether it be because of economics, because of family members, friends, colleagues, passing away due to COVID. What would you tell our audience today that maybe are still struggling, that maybe have exhibited some aspects of depression or other mental health signs of decline? What can you tell our audience today about what's the best way to sort of overcome this? Maybe because, listen, people sometimes are apprehensive about seeing a professional. Not everyone is, eager to go see a psychiatrist or a therapist. What can we try to do to help break that myth or break that cycle and encourage people to say, listen, it's okay to talk to someone?
Yes. There is still, unfortunately, somewhat of a stigma, and sometimes in certain areas than others. But nowadays, of course, with therapists, including myself, seeing patients via Zoom or via telephone, it's so much easier to connect with a therapist than ever before. But you do need to check their credentials, because there are too many organizations out there who are advertising, therapists on your cell phone or things like that. I mean, that really, you have to check the credentials. They're not necessarily all vetting the credentials, but it certainly is important. I think that the problem that people have is that they underestimate their degree of dysfunction. Like if they're feeling anxious or depressed, and they think, oh, well, I'll get over it. You know, the pandemic is going to be over soon, and so I'll get over it, and I don't have to reach out to a therapist. But first of all, people are going to need additional help for getting into this so-called new normal.
Mhm.
You know, that's not going to be easy because it's not a normal like we had before. There are so many other problems that we're going to be confronting. How do we deal with people? You know, we've all become much more awkward in actually having relationships. We haven't had hugs. We haven't had kisses. We haven't, our relationships with people have changed. And so we have to learn that again. There are just, you know, some people are afraid to come out of their home, and, you know, perhaps with good reason, because there are these variants. I mean, that's another whole problem that nobody really knows. And we're getting all kinds of contradictory information about what's safe and what's not safe. Mm-hmm. So of course you need to have somebody to talk to. And, you know, so some people say, well, I can talk to my friends or my family, and yeah, sure, that's great. We all need social supports, but then also we need a more objective person to kind of see things that maybe our friends or family won't tell us.
Absolutely, Dr. Lieberman. Let me ask you this though, because one of the dynamics for millions of Americans seeking help in any capacity is, let's say, going to a therapist, is there's a monetary concern I think many Americans have. Some still don't have health insurance. Some look at therapy and seeing a mental health professional as costly. And for millions of Americans that maybe are living on a really strict budget because of either still on unemployment or not being able to get back on their feet with work, it seems like, hey, listen, you know, food on the table is more important than my mental health. Listen, it's just as important being physically healthy, having a good diet, being, you know, working out in some capacity, again, just living well physically. But the mental health, I think, is something that maybe goes disregarded because people, for example, are just concerned about the monetary cost. Like, I can't afford this. I can't go online or see someone and consult with them because either A, I don't have insurance, even if I have insurance, the co-pays, for example, are still costly. How have you dealt with that when taking on new clients and people that reach out to you for counseling?
Well, you know, a lot of therapists are not charging quite as much as they usually do if they're doing the therapy by Zoom or by telephone, because that doesn't entail driving to their office and so on. And then I would also have people think about it in a different way, that how can you not afford to do it? Because therapy and your mental state very much affects your physical state. We know that stress, for one thing, stress affects the immune system. So if you are feeling stressed and having various symptoms, then your immune system is weakened, which means you are at greater risk of catching COVID. Also, just in general, in terms of being able to work, if you're under a lot of stress or you're having various symptoms, you're not going to be able to work as many hours because this stress is going to be affecting your physical strength and stamina as well. So it's really not a choice, or it shouldn't be looked on as like dessert. You know, it's really more the meat or the fish. We're not supposed to eat meat, right? You know, it's the main dish. Let's put it that way, and everybody should be having.
Doctor, it seems, again, we're living in this woke culture. So as we were talking about before, whether it's about trans issues or even issues about racism, it seems that race has also been weaponized. And I think that's also taking a tremendous toll on people's mental health in terms of what they're seeing in the current headlines and our current social and political climate. What's your experience been in terms of dealing with patients that seem overwhelmed by, again, the climate we're living in right now, where race, gender, and other aspects are just being weaponized to sort of meet a political end?
Yes, and we all know that this is stirred on by BLM, the three women who founded Black Lives Matter, and AOC and Squad, and all of those people who are, you know, pushing Biden to do what they want him to do, and that's their agenda. I mean, they don't make any bones about it. It's on their, you know, on their website, when they did a week of teaching students during Black History Month, it was on a particular website that listed their agenda. And it is all about getting people to not carry on with the biological sex that they were born with, getting people to believe that we're all racist if we're not Black or people of color. I mean, it is having such a harmful effect on children who don't yet have their brains formed enough, their minds formed enough to be able to think about these things for themselves and make their own decisions. This is being forced down with these woke agendas in schools. It's being forced down kids' necks, kids' mouths, and really causing a lot of damage, pandemic or no pandemic. It's just causing a lot of psychological damage to kids. And then you wonder why, or it is no wonder why, there are kids in the streets who are being violent towards people sitting outside in a restaurant, for example, and who believe, that they're justified in what they're saying and in how violent they are and in all that, because this is what they were taught. So they don't know better. I mean, parents need, of course, to be much more involved with what their kids are learning. That's number one. But yes, this is being pushed down our throat. And the sad part is that we are only waking up, waking up to what is really going on. And we're a little late to the party, but so we have to work a lot harder to correct all of this misinformation.
Dr. Lieberman, one of the things I'm curious about whenever I can talk to a mental health professional on a show is sort of the adverse impact that smartphone technology continues to have on our population, not just only our children, adolescents, but also adults. It just seemed even pre-COVID that we've become much more socially awkward. It seems like the ability to have conversations and engage in regular socialization has been greatly hindered, I would say, by advances in smartphone technologies. And I think that's not going away anytime soon. Is that fair to say?
Yes, no, that's a good point, that it started even before the pandemic. As an example, we all see people, or we used to see, when you go to restaurants, you see groups of people, whether it's a group of teenagers or families or whoever, even people on dates. It's such to the extent that there are dates anymore these days. Sure. They sit there with their phone on the table. And it is so rude, and it pings, and people, quickly go to look. Did they get a text? Did they get a call? What did they get? And we're like Pavlov's dogs, and we totally disconnect from the person we're sitting across from. And yes, this really has to be, we have to. And the thing is, we have become addicted, so it's hard now to stop. But parents can do a lot to help their kids not get addicted by, for example, not allowing kids to have their phones in their rooms when they go to sleep. That's a bad situation. Lots of kids have their phones right next to their head, which of course is bad in terms of getting brain cancer and so on. It's not good to get the radiation so close to your body. That's number one. And also if it pings in the middle of the night, they're right there talking to their friends or texting with their friends. So you have to take the phones away from them during sleep time. And also during other times, dinner time or whatever, when you're supposed to be talking with each other, just to point out how rude it is, not only amongst the family members, but just with other friends. Your friends won't like you if you keep, you need to teach them how it feels to the person who's being disregarded, disrespected, when you go to check your phone, because what you're saying is, I'm expecting that whatever is on my phone is much more important than me talking to you.
Absolutely. And staying on that, I think it sort of exacerbates even a bigger problem, though, Dr. Lieberman, because once again, it's really hindering our ability to engage in healthy socialization. I can't tell you how many people I talk to that it's funny, I'll call them and they won't pick up, but if I text them, they'll write essays. And I get it. Maybe you're home, maybe you have children. I understand. But if there's downtime and you're able to talk on the phone, I prefer to do that. I can't tell you in my lifetime, women I date, that I love talking on the phone. I enjoy it. I love hearing a person's voice. I love hearing the context of what they're saying to me. during a conversation about whatever it is that's going on with us, or we're having a conversation about our families or about the world, whatever the case may be. It just seems unfortunate. We've normalized this text-centric society where, hey, it's just better to text. And I don't know about you, I just don't think it's healthy. And at the end of the day, when you're texting something, normally what I do now, especially with an iPhone, I just send audio messages, and that kind of pisses people off a little bit. It's like, oh, why can't you just text? I'm like, because I want you to hear what I have to say. I don't want you to misunderstand or misrepresent the context of what I'm saying. And I think that's frustrating. But unfortunately, that's the culture we live in, because smartphones, let's be honest, since 2007, when the iPhone was introduced, that's changed, I think, socialization forever.
I remember when texting first came out, and I said, I am never going to text. And then eventually I succumbed. But I totally agree with you that people so easily misread, misunderstand text. Just like, I mean, think about it. You know, before texting, there were emails. And it's very hard to get emotion across in emails. People don't know when you're being sarcastic or when you're being serious or whatever. And of course, it's a lot harder to get the context from a text.
No, it is. And it's really frustrating, because I understand there's a necessity for it in business and, you know, media, whatever. You have to communicate with people. I get it. It has to be brief and succinct. But oftentimes I think we're sort of just normalizing, like, that's enough. That's okay. Very quickly, before I let you go, Dr. Lieberman, I know you obviously have so much extensive experience in the entertainment world. Did you watch the Oscars last night? Were you?
I refused.
Okay.
Because first of all, I just knew it was going to be awful, and people, I mean, it's sad that people haven't been to movies, and so they don't have a movie that they're rooting for. Like I don't have a movie that I'm rooting for, but I just kind of, I don't know. I think I probably was afraid that it was going to be too woke. And in fact, I tweeted about that this morning. I said that, you know, when will the Oscars realize that that we don't want to hear political speeches, we want to be entertained. And if they don't realize this soon, they're going to go the way of the NFL, or words to that effect. They need to be more, they need to show appreciation to their viewers.
They really do. Dr. Lieberman, again, thank you so much for your time, and keep up the great work as America's psychiatrist. Stay safe and healthy. We'll talk to you again soon here on Liquid Lunch.
Thank you. You too.